There's magic in making bread. Have you discovered it yet? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast, your podcast source for answers to all your cruising questions, even those you haven't quite figured out you've got yet. Today's episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Shambhala Sailing Adventures, offering customized learning charters in Exuma's Bahamas. Sailor like you own her, with coaching from Captain Suki Cannon. Contact her at captainsuki@gmail.com. That's CAPTAINSUKY@gmail. Mention this podcast for 10% off. Here's the thing. I gotta tell you, there is nothing quite as magic about self-sufficiency and satisfaction. And yeah, I'm talking about making your own bread on board. You take some flour, some water, some salt, some yeast, and time, and it all magically comes into loaves of bread. And yeah, I'm using the term magic all the time. Cruising to me is about magic. It's about the magic of self-sufficiency. It's about the magic of creating things from basic ingredients. It's about the magic of being out there and living the way that you totally want to. So when you start going away and you start going cruising, the way that we like to cruise, we love to cruise in less populated places. And it means we can't always rely on finding stuff. That stuff, in quotation marks, is anything from bread to boat parts to knowing how to fix something. And understanding how to make something or make do is actually a critical skill. The thing with bread baking is that it can seem totally mysterious. You can intimidate yourself like nobody's business by going to the library. There are some books that are bigger than War and Peace on the whole subject. Depending on which book you pick up, you might think that making bread is akin to tiptoeing through a minefield. I got actually turned off of picking up recipe books when I picked up one that spent, I can't tell you, 50, 60 pages that talked about all the ways you could screw up the loaf of bread. Wow. Nope. I already have enough trouble with some of the things that I like to do. I don't need to be reading a cookbook that's going to tell me how easy it is for me to screw it up. But I have to tell you, making your own bread is not that difficult. And there's nothing quite so relaxing and satisfying as turning flour, salt, water, and yeast. And I have to tell you, at least in the places that we've cruised, in the Bahamas and the Eastern Caribbean, you can find all of those things just about everywhere. Or if you're talking about yeast, you can carry a chunk of it for a long time without taking up way too much space. You can turn flour, salt, water, and yeast into bread. You can add some extra ingredients and up the flavor quotient or change the flavor quotient, but if you're talking sandwich bread or baguettes, pita bread, burger buns, naan, crusty loaves, soft crust loaves, just about any kind of bread you want to eat, you totally can do it yourself. And besides, making your own bread lets you get your hands dirty. It allows you the sheer pleasure of that magic change in texture as you watch that initial gloppy mess turn into something smooth and round and firm just because you took the time to knead it. Or just took the time. For me, it's like my childhood and its practicality and its creativity all wrapped up into something that I can sink my teeth into quite literally. I've put together a whole host of homemade bread videos in one easy to find spot that I'll put a link to in the show notes. And I'll be adding some more when I move back on board. And yes, some of those videos that I have are done with land appliances in mind. And right now I am on land. And I won't be forever. But all of these recipes can be done by hand. And making bread yourself is a liberating skill. The first time you do it, even if you're using a machine, and I don't mean a bread machine that you're dropping in the ingredients and pressing a button and walking away, but you're using a food processor or a mixer, a stand mixer, even if you practice using those appliances that you might not have when you go cruising, once you know that you can make your own bread, that knowledge is a part of you. I mentioned in a recent podcast about learning how to DIY, learning how to do it yourself. This is something you can practice and own in your head. Bread making involves your eyes. It involves the sense of touch and smell and taste. If you're making a super crusty bread like a sourdough bread, it sings to you when it cools down. But the best sense of all is the sense of confidence that is the underpinning of a true successful cruiser. I don't care where you're going or for how long. What kind of bread do you want to learn to make yourself? And when are we going to share a cockpit and swap some recipes? Thanks for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We aim to answer all your cruising questions, so ask away. Between Carolyn and me, we've cruised with kids, without kids, with dogs, without dogs, on a catamaran, on a monohull, in the Sea of Cortez, in the Bahamas, in the Eastern Caribbean, crossing the Atlantic. Lots and lots of different experience and lots of answers we can share. Ask away. There's a link in the show notes. Have a great one, and we look forward to talking to you next time. The time will come yet for